They don't fear loud women. They fear the quiet one who finally wakes up. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the whole world changes. And most people won't see it coming until it's too late. They trained you to believe your softness makes you weak, your silence makes you invisible, and your solitude means something is wrong with you. But Jung would tell you something far more uncomfortable and far more freeing. What you hide inside becomes the force that runs your life from the shadows. So if you felt underestimated, overlooked, or treated like your value needs to be proved, good, because that pressure is often the exact doorway to your awakening. In this video, you're going to learn why women with real inner strength don't need big circles, loud speeches, or constant approval, and how a few precise shifts in boundaries, self-respect, and discernment can change how people treat you almost immediately. Not someday, not after years of therapy talk. Quickly, because the moment you stop feeding cheap attention and start living from authenticity, your entire energy rewrites the rules of the room. And here's the twist that makes it controversial. The world doesn't underestimate you because you lack power. It underestimates you because your power isn't for sale. They look at your silence and assume there's nothing there. But you and I both know silence can be a vault, not a void. Your inner strength isn't loud because it doesn't need to audition. You don't fill space just to keep people comfortable. And that alone feels like a threat to anyone addicted to noise. They underestimate you because they can't measure you. They can't label you, predict you, or figure you out in 5 minutes, so they call you distant when you're actually discerning. That's discernment, not coldness, not attitude. That's your authenticity refusing to perform. You've probably seen it, a room full of talk and then you walk in. Not because you're trying to be mysterious, because you're grounded. Your presence has self-respect baked into it like heat in an oven. You don't chase approval, you carry independence like a backbone. People sense your boundaries before you ever explain them. It's like you're holding a candle in a windy place, steady, protected, calm. Some folks can't handle that because it exposes their restlessness. They'll poke you with little comments just to see if you'll flinch. But you don't bite every hook because you know what you're worth. And that kind of calm makes shallow games look, honestly, kind of silly. Here's a practical shift that changes everything. You stop narrating yourself. No more over-explaining your mood, your choices, your why. Try a simple line, "I'm good with my decision," and then breathe. That's boundaries in real life, not a motivational poster. If you want to train this muscle, start with a 24-hour pause rule. Before you reply to a triggering text, you wait 1 day, watch your power return. And if you need a guide, read Boundaries, Cloud and Townsend, for structure. Then read The Gift of Fear, Gavin de Becker, for trust in your instincts. You'll notice your discernment sharpens when you stop feeding chaos. That's when your solitude stops feeling empty and starts feeling like home. People confuse solitude with loneliness because they've never met themselves. But you're not alone, you're becoming aligned, and that's different. In solitude, you hear what you actually want, not what people demand. It's like stepping out of a crowded mall into fresh night air, finally, quiet. And in that quiet, your shadow doesn't scare you as much anymore. You start noticing patterns, who drains you, who respects you, who performs love. That's awakening, not fireworks, but clarity that doesn't negotiate. A small habit helps, a 1-page journal at night. What felt heavy today? And a second line, what did my body warn me about that I ignored? Do that for 7 days and you'll feel your inner strength speak up. Now here's the part they really can't read. You're not withholding, you're selecting. Your authenticity won't trade depth for popularity, even if it's tempting. You don't need to be liked by everyone, because you're not running for office. You're building a life where your self-respect is non-negotiable. And once that's true, your silence becomes a filter. It reveals intentions fast. Some people only approach you when they think you're easy to impress, but the moment they realize you're not hungry for validation, they get nervous. Because now they have to offer something real, not just attention. And that's where the next lesson begins, what you do when cheap attention shows up, because the world is full of noise, and not all of it deserves a seat at your table. Let's be honest, cheap attention is everywhere now. It shows up as compliments with strings attached, DMs that start sweet and end needy, friends who love you as long as you stay small, and co-workers who only notice you when you're useful. And if you've got inner strength, people will test it. Quietly, casually, like it's a game. They'll offer you crumbs and watch to see if you call it a meal. But the moment you become unavailable to that kind of attention, something wild happens. The room gets quieter, the manipulators get bored, and the real ones step forward. That's self-respect in motion. Not dramatic, not rude, just clear. You're not hard to love. You're just not for sale. And your authenticity can't be rented by anyone's approval. Here's the metaphor that'll stick with you. Attention is currency. Some people pay with counterfeit bills, big talk, quick praise, empty promises. It looks shiny, it feels good for a second, and then it buys you nothing but confusion. When you accept it, you're basically saying, this is enough for access to me. And access is expensive. It should cost boundaries, consistency, and real care. So you stop reacting to every ping like it's an emergency. You stop answering texts that make your stomach tighten. You stop saying yes to plans that feel like emotional debt. This is discernment, your nervous system becoming your advisor. And once you learn that, you don't just protect your time, you protect your peace. Now let's make it practical, because wisdom without action is just decoration. Try this for 1 week. Every time someone offers attention, ask one question privately. Does this person respect my boundaries when there's nothing to gain? If the answer is unclear, slow down. Slow is a superpower. Use a simple script. I appreciate it. I'll think about it. That line alone filters out impulsive people who want immediate access. And if you want to level up, make a personal rule. No big decisions when you feel flattered. Flattery can be a fog machine. It makes the stage look magical while hiding the wires. When the fog clears, you'll see what's real, and your independence gets stronger. A lot of women get trapped because they confuse intensity with intimacy. Someone comes in hot, messages all day, big promises, fast closeness. And it feels like love, but it's often just urgency wearing a romantic costume. Real love has patience. Real respect doesn't rush your awakening. So you start measuring people by pattern, not by performance. Do they show up consistently? Do they apologize without excuses? Do they celebrate your growth, or do they get weird when you shine? That's the difference between someone who wants to know you and someone who wants to use you. And when you choose solitude over confusing company, you're not missing out. You're dodging a slow leak that would have drained your whole life. Here's where it gets deeper. When you stop feeding cheap attention, your shadow gets loud. Because part of you might still crave being chosen, praised, wanted. Who doesn't? But Jung's point hits hard. What you don't face runs your decisions from the basement. So you learn to sit with that craving without obeying it. You say, I see you, and you don't hand it the steering wheel. That's inner strength. Not being untempted, but being unowned. And soon, you'll notice something. Your energy becomes quieter but heavier. Like a deep ocean, no waves on top, but power underneath. Which leads us straight into the next shift. The moment you stop explaining yourself at all. You don't owe the world a TED talk about your boundaries. You don't have to translate your silence so other people can relax. The more you explain, the more you invite negotiation. And negotiation is where self-respect goes to die, slowly, politely. Carl Jung said the unexamined parts of you don't vanish, they rule you. So when you over-explain, ask yourself, is this authenticity or fear? because fear loves to dress up as being nice and keeping peace. But peace that costs your dignity is just a prettier kind of chaos. Real inner strength is staying calm while people don't get you. That's the first taste of awakening. You stop performing to be safe. Think of explanation like perfume. A little is fine. Too much makes people choke. Some folks aren't confused. They're fishing, waiting for a weak spot. They want details so they can argue, guilt you, or twist your words later. So you learn to speak like a door with a lock. Simple, firm, closed. Try this line when someone pushes, "That doesn't work for me." Period. No extra paragraphs, no emotional footnotes, no courtroom defense. At first, it feels uncomfortable, like you're walking out without saying goodbye. But discomfort is often just old programming leaving your body. And the more you practice, the sharper your discernment gets. You start hearing manipulation in the tone, not just the words. Here's a practical exercise, the one-sentence boundary. Whatever you're tempted to explain, cut it down to one clean sentence. "I'm not available." "I'm choosing something else." "No, thank you." If they ask why, you repeat the same sentence, calm, steady, kind. That repetition isn't stubbornness, it's independence in action. And if you want a book that helps, read Essentialism, Greg McKeown. It teaches you that saying no isn't rejection, it's direction. Also, the courage to be disliked can be a punchy mindset reset. You'll feel your self-respect grow every time you stop over-justifying, and you'll notice your silence starts sounding like confidence. Now, let's talk about the hidden reason you explain so much. The shadow. A part of you fears being misunderstood, disliked, abandoned, labeled difficult. So you try to buy safety with explanations, like tossing coins into a well. But the well never fills, because the real issue isn't them. It's the pattern. Jung would say what you avoid becomes your destiny in disguise, so you face it gently. I'm allowed to be misunderstood sometimes. You don't need everyone to approve for you to be okay. Your authenticity isn't a group project, and that's a relief. When you stop trying to control perception, you start controlling your choices. And choices are where inner strength becomes visible. And here's the twist. Not explaining doesn't make you colder, it makes you clearer. Clear women don't create confusion, they expose it. That's why people who rely on blurred lines get uncomfortable around you. They'll test you, tease you, say, "Why are you acting like this?" And you'll smile because you know what's happening now. You're not changing into someone else. You're returning to yourself. You're choosing solitude over noise when noise tries to own your mood. You're choosing peace over proving, direction over debate. And once you taste that clarity, you'll want more of it. Because the next step is learning how solitude can build you, not break you. You've been told solitude is a warning sign, like smoke in a quiet house. But sometimes it's not smoke. It's a clean reset, fresh air after too much noise. When you step back, you're not missing out. You're rebuilding inner strength. Your silence stops being a defense and starts being a sanctuary. And people who live on constant chatter will misunderstand that on purpose. They'll call you distant because they can't benefit from your availability. But your self-respect isn't a public service. It's a private foundation. This is where discernment becomes real. You choose who gets access. Because the truth is, not every voice deserves your nervous system. And that truth is the beginning of a serious awakening. Let me make it simple. Solitude is like a gym for your soul. At first, it feels awkward, like walking into a weight room alone. But then you realize nobody's judging you as much as you imagined. In solitude, you hear your own thoughts without outside edits. You start noticing which relationships shrink your authenticity. You notice how often you say yes just to avoid tension. Ouch, right? That's not weakness. That's old survival software running in the background. So you update it with boundaries, tiny, consistent, not dramatic. You stop giving long explanations and start giving calm decisions. And suddenly your independence feels less like armor and more like peace. Here's something practical you can actually do this week. Plan one solo hour. No phone scrolling, no background noise, no productive pressure. Take a walk, sit in a cafe, or drive with the radio off. Yes, it's weird at first. Bring a notebook and write 3 lines. What drains me? What heals me? What's next? That's discernment training, and it strengthens self-respect fast. If you want a guide, read Atomic Habits, James Clear, for tiny daily structure. Then pair it with Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, for deeper purpose. You'll feel your silence start to carry weight, like a steady heartbeat. And you'll notice your authenticity gets louder without raising its voice. That's how solitude builds you, quietly, consistently, powerfully. Now, let's talk about the emotional side, because this is where people quit. When you sit alone, your mind brings receipts, old wounds, regrets, cravings for approval. That's not a failure. That's your shadow knocking on the door like, hey, we need to talk. Most people run back into distractions the second they feel that discomfort. But you, if you want true awakening, you learn to stay in the room. You breathe, you name the feeling, and you don't make it your identity. You don't say, I'm broken, you say, I'm processing. Big difference. That's inner strength. Not being fearless, but being honest without collapsing. And honestly, it's kind of funny. Your loneliness often disappears when you stop fighting it, because what you resist tends to grow teeth, and what you face tends to soften. And here's the surprising payoff. Solitude makes your standards rise naturally. When you're okay alone, you stop chasing people who treat you like an option. Your boundaries stop feeling like rules and start feeling like self-care. You become less reactive, more intentional, more anchored in self-respect. You stop confusing company with love and attention with value. That's why some people get uneasy around you. You're harder to hook. Your silence becomes a filter, your discernment becomes a compass, and your independence becomes attractive in a way that scares weak intentions. Because now the question isn't, who will choose me? It's, what part of me have I been avoiding? And why does it keep returning? They call you too much, but what they really mean is too awake. Because your awakening makes their excuses look flimsy. You're not louder, you're clearer, and clarity scares people. Your silence isn't passive anymore, it's watchful, intentional. And your inner strength isn't a mood, it's a decision you keep repeating. Carl Jung warned that what you refuse to face doesn't disappear. It waits, it shapes your choices, and it quietly collects interest. So when you stop pretending you're fine, you stop being controlled. That's when self-respect stops being a word and becomes a posture. And suddenly, the world can't underestimate you the same way. Think of your shadow, like a locked basement in your own house. You can ignore it for years, but it still affects the smell upstairs. Old anger, old grief, old people-pleasing. It leaks through the floorboards. So you stop decorating the living room and finally go downstairs. Not to shame yourself, never that, but to reclaim what's yours. Because buried emotions are just unfinished messages, and when you read them, you get your power back. Your authenticity stops being fragile like glass and becomes solid like stone. You don't need applause to feel real. You need alignment, and that's where discernment gets sharp. Here's a simple way to start integrating without turning it into a project. Once a day, write one sentence. Today I felt doing and I wanted to do. No judging, no policing, no, I shouldn't feel this nonsense. Then add a second sentence. What did that feeling protect me from? You'll be shocked how often anger is protecting a boundary you never voiced, or how often sadness is asking for solitude instead of more noise. If you want a strong companion book, try Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl. And for mental clarity and habits, Atomic Habits, James Clear, keeps it practical. This isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming honest. And honesty is the real beginning of independence. Now watch what changes in real life when you stop fighting your own shadow. You stop explaining your choices like you're on trial. You say no, and your voice doesn't shake as much. You leave the group chat where the jokes always land on you. You stop calling it love when it's actually anxiety with a nice outfit. You start noticing who respects your boundaries when they're disappointed. That's a massive filter, by the way. Better than any personality test. And here's the funny part. People who only liked your softness will complain. They'll say you changed, like it's an insult. But you'll know you didn't change. You finally became whole. When your shadow is integrated, you stop begging to be chosen. You choose yourself first, and everything else has to earn access. Your self-respect becomes quiet but immovable, like a mountain. Your silence becomes a test. Who stays kind when you're not entertaining them? Your discernment becomes faster. You read patterns, not promises, and your authenticity starts demanding real connections, not polite performance. That's when you realize something. Some circles are just costumes. They look like friendship, but they feel like pressure. So the next question isn't who likes me, it's who is real with me when there's nothing to gain. They think a big friend group means a big life. But you've learned that noise isn't the same as love. A crowded circle can still feel like solitude if nobody sees you. So you choose fewer people, and you choose them on purpose. That's not isolation. It's discernment with a spine. You're not anti-social, you're anti-fake. You're tired of smiling through disrespect just to keep the vibe. Your self-respect doesn't fit inside shallow conversations anymore, and the world calls that cold because it can't monetize your silence. But deep down, you know you're just protecting your authenticity. Think of friendship like food. Some people serve you sugar, sweet, addictive, and empty. It tastes good for a second, then your energy crashes hard. Real friends are protein, steady, honest, not always flashy. They don't need you to perform, they let you breathe. And you can tell the difference by how you feel after you leave them. Do you feel lighter, or do you feel like you need a nap and a therapist? That's your body reading the room before your mind catches up. Your inner strength grows when you stop ignoring those signals, because ignoring signals is how the shadow keeps running your social life. Here's a practical way to clean your circle without making it dramatic. Stop announcing your moves. Just change your availability. Reply slower to people who only contact you when they want something. Say, "I can't make it," without writing a paragraph of apologies. Watch who punishes your boundaries with guilt. Watch who respects your no without trying to bargain. That one moment reveals more than a year of "how are you" texts. If you want a simple rule, invest where there's reciprocity, not entertainment. You're not a streaming service. You don't exist to keep people amused. That's independence, and it's a quiet kind of awakening. Now let's talk about performative friendships, the ones that look perfect online. They're full of selfies, captions, "love you bestie," and zero real support. The minute you struggle, the energy changes and suddenly they're busy. That's not friendship, that's networking with extra hugs. You don't have to hate them, you just stop giving them your inner world. Because access to you is a privilege, not a default setting. So you get comfortable with being misunderstood for choosing peace. You accept that some people only like the version of you that says yes. And you stop being that version because your self-respect is done negotiating. You'd rather have honest solitude than fake closeness that costs your authenticity. And here's the surprising part. When you cut the fake, you feel lonely for a minute. Not because you made a mistake, but because your nervous system is detoxing. You're used to constant pings, constant rolls, constant being on. Then the quiet arrives and your silence feels loud at first, but soon it turns into space. Space to think, space to heal, space to choose. And in that space, your standards rise without you forcing anything. You stop chasing people to prove you're lovable. You start becoming the kind of person you actually respect, which leads to the next skill, not needing emotional rescue from anyone, because when you master emotional self-sufficiency, your whole life shifts. Here's the truth nobody says out loud. When you're emotionally self-sufficient, you become hard to manipulate, not because you're cold, because you're free. You stop begging for reassurance like it's oxygen. You stop turning other people into your emotional landlords. Your self-respect becomes the place you come home to, even on bad days. That's inner strength, not I never feel, but I can feel and still steer. And the world tends to underestimate women who don't need to be rescued, because if you don't need saving, you can't be controlled with fear. Your silence becomes calm instead of anxious. And that calm is the first visible sign of awakening. Think of emotional dependence like carrying a phone with a dying battery. You're constantly looking for a charger, someone's approval, attention, reassurance. And when you can't find it, you panic, you overthink, you spiral. But emotional self-sufficiency is like having your own generator. You still like support, you still enjoy love, but you're not desperate for it. You can be alone without collapsing into solitude as punishment. You can be rejected without turning it into a verdict on your worth. That's authenticity. You don't have to act okay. You become okay. And when people can't push your buttons, they stop trying to. Because boundaries are easier to hold when you're not starving for validation. Let's make this practical, because you're not here for pretty words. Start with a self-soothing menu. 5 things that reliably calm you down. For example, a 20-minute walk, a hot shower, journaling 1 page, stretching, making tea. Add 1 social option that's healthy, like calling a friend who doesn't feed drama. Then add 1 mind reset, reading 10 pages of The Untethered Soul, Michael Singer, or As a Man Thinketh, James Allen. If you want something more modern and punchy, The Mountain Is You, Brianna Wiest, hits hard. You're training your nervous system to say, we're safe, without outsourcing it. And once you do that, your discernment gets cleaner, because fear stops blurring your vision. You'll start making choices from clarity, not craving. That's how independence becomes emotional, not just practical. Now let's talk about the shadow side of this, because it's sneaky. Sometimes you call it love, but it's actually anxiety trying to attach. You cling to people who are inconsistent because the inconsistency feels familiar. Your brain mistakes intensity for intimacy, and it feels like chemistry. But chemistry isn't always health. Sometimes it's a trauma habit in a cute outfit. So you learn to slow down when something feels too urgent. You stop texting back immediately just to keep someone interested. You let silence exist without rushing to fix it. That's boundaries and self-respect working together like a team. And as Jung would point out, when you face the pattern, you break the spell. Here's the payoff. Emotional self-sufficiency makes your relationships better, not smaller. You stop picking people to fill holes and start picking people to share life with. You stop accepting crumbs because you're not hungry for approval anymore. Your authenticity becomes magnetic in a quiet way, like, wow, she's solid. And the funny part, people who used to ignore you will suddenly notice you, not because you're chasing them, but because you stopped chasing anybody. Your silence reads as confidence. Your discernment reads as maturity, and your self-respect sets the tone before you even speak, which naturally leads to the next shift, the aura of self-respect, what people feel before you say a word. Because once you carry that aura, the world treats you differently without understanding why. People feel it before they understand it. They can't always explain why you seem different, but they sense it fast. It's the aura of self-respect. Not attitude, not arrogance, not a performance. It's the quiet certainty that you won't betray yourself just to be liked. Your silence isn't awkward anymore. It's deliberate. Your posture, your pace, your eye contact, everything says, I'm not available for nonsense. And the world tends to underestimate women until they carry that energy consistently. Because consistent energy is powerful, it's hard to manipulate. This is awakening in the real world. You stop negotiating your dignity in small moments. And those small moments are exactly where your life is decided. Think of self-respect like a scent you can't spray on, only earn. You earn it when you leave the conversation that disrespects you. You earn it when you stop laughing at jokes that bruise you. You earn it when you don't over-explain your boundaries like you're asking permission. And here's the wild part. Once you earn it, people adjust. Some will respect you more. Some will disappear. Both outcomes are a win, even if it stings for a second, because losing people who only liked your lack of boundaries is not a loss. That's your discernment getting upgraded and your inner strength getting visible. Let's get practical, because aura without action is just cosplay. Try the 3-second rule. Before you respond to anything triggering, pause for 3 seconds. It sounds tiny, but it's huge. It stops you from reacting from your shadow. Then answer with fewer words than you normally would. A calm, "No, I'm not doing that," is stronger than a 5-minute explanation. If you're used to people-pleasing, this will feel like you're being mean. You're not mean, you're new. Your nervous system is learning a new language. Practice in low-stakes situations. Return the wrong order politely. Ask for what you paid for. Say no to an extra task at work. Each small win builds your aura brick by brick. And soon, your independence won't just be a trait, it'll be your default setting. Now let's talk about why this aura makes some people uncomfortable. Because self-respect is a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. When you hold your standards, you force others to face their own. People who rely on guilt, charm, or chaos hate that mirror. They'll call you cold, changed, too serious, too picky. But notice something. Those labels are usually complaints from people who benefited when you had none. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to convince them. You just keep your boundaries steady and your tone calm. That's inner strength, not drama, not anger, just consistency. And consistency turns your aura into something nobody can ignore. If you want a powerful mental framework, here it is. Your life is a voting booth. Every time you accept disrespect, you vote for more disrespect. Every time you protect your peace, you vote for a better life. So you start voting differently. You stop entertaining half-effort friendships. You stop dating potential and ignoring patterns. You stop explaining basic decency like it's advanced math. And yes, it's lonely for a minute, because your old environment was built around your old behavior. But then it gets lighter, because you're not carrying other people's comfort anymore. You begin to feel your authenticity settle into your body, and once you feel that, you start seeing through people even faster. Which brings us to the next shift. The mind that sees through patterns, not promises. At some point, you stop falling for the nice packaging. You start seeing patterns the way a good detective sees footprints. Not because you're paranoid, because your discernment finally grew teeth. You notice how someone treats waitstaff, how they talk about people behind their back, how they handle a simple no. You catch the little contradictions, big promises, small effort, loud words, quiet follow-through. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the gift and the burden of awakening. People call you intense, but really you're just awake to reality. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's you observing, connecting dots, staying grounded. That's inner strength in a world that begs you to be distracted. Let me give you a metaphor. Most people listen like they're watching a magic trick. They get hypnotized by the hands, the compliments, the charm, the "I've never met anyone like you." But you've learned to watch the table. You watch the timing, the motive, the pattern, the repeat behavior. You don't just hear what they say, you feel what they're trying to get. And it's not cynical, it's mature. It's self-respect protecting your time. Because your time is your life and you don't get refunds. So you stop giving discounts to people who keep showing you the same behavior. That's independence at the mental level. Your mind doesn't get rented out by charm. Here's a practical tool you can use today. The 3 Ps. Pattern, proof, and pressure. Pattern. Has this behavior happened more than once? Proof. Is there real action behind the words or just talk? Pressure. Are they rushing you, guilt-tripping you, or making you feel you must decide now? Pressure is a red flag because healthy people don't need urgency to get access to you. When you use this, your boundaries get easier because you're not deciding emotionally in the moment. And if you want a book that sharpens this mindset, The Gift of Fear, Gavin de Becker, is gold. Also, Crucial Conversations helps you speak clearly without turning it into a fight. This isn't about judging people, it's about choosing wisely with discernment. Now let's talk about your shadow, because even the sharpest mind can get tricked when the heart is hungry. If part of you fears being alone, you'll excuse what you shouldn't. If part of you craves being chosen, you'll tolerate crumbs and call it romance. So you learn to check yourself gently. Am I seeing reality, or am I hoping reality changes? Hope is beautiful, but hope without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. And self-betrayal is what drains your inner strength over time. So you practice staying honest even when it's uncomfortable. You sit in solitude long enough to feel the truth without rushing to numb it. That's not loneliness, that's maturity forming in your chest. And the more mature you become, the less appealing confusion feels. Here's the payoff. When you see through people, you stop taking things personally. You don't spiral when someone pulls away. You just notice the pattern. You don't chase mixed signals. You choose clarity. You don't argue for your worth. You live from self-respect. And your authenticity becomes calmer because you're not trying to win anybody over. You start realizing most rejection is just redirection with a different name. So you walk away sooner, with less anger, more peace. And that peace changes your whole vibe because you're not reactive anymore. Which leads us to the final shift. The moment you stop asking if you're enough and start asking if life deserves you. That question is where the real transformation begins. One day, almost quietly, the question flips. You stop asking, am I enough? And you start asking, does this deserve me? That's not arrogance, that's awakening with self-respect. Because when you've lived long enough trying to earn love, you get tired of auditions. You realize you've been treating your life like a job interview, smiling through discomfort, explaining yourself, settling for crumbs. And then something inside you finally says, yeah, I'm done. Not angry done, awake done. And calm done. Your silence becomes a decision, not a symptom, and your inner strength stops being theoretical. It becomes your new normal. Here's a metaphor. You've been living like a house with every door unlocked. People walked in with muddy shoes, moved furniture, raised their voices and called it love. You kept cleaning up after them because you thought love meant endurance. But awakening is when you install locks, not to shut out the world, but to protect your peace. You don't let just anyone walk into your mind, your time, your body, your future. That's what boundaries really are. Locks with kindness. They don't make you bitter. They make you safe. And safety is where your authenticity finally breathes. You stop shrinking to be chosen. You choose yourself, and suddenly everything else has to level up. Let's make it practical. What does this deserve me look like tomorrow morning? It looks like checking your calendar and asking, what drains me every week? It looks like quitting one habit that steals your energy, doom scrolling, gossip calls, late night texting that never turns into real love. It looks like raising your standards in tiny ways. Clean food, clean sleep, clean conversations. If you want a simple life upgrade formula, protect your mornings, protect your body, protect your focus. Read Essentialism again if you need clarity, and pair it with Atomic Habits for momentum. And if you're rebuilding confidence, the Confidence Code, Kay and Shipman, is practical and empowering. You start stacking small wins like bricks, and soon your independence isn't a concept, it's your lifestyle. That's when people stop underestimating you, because your life starts looking unmovable. Now the emotional part. Awakening will cost you comfort. You'll outgrow rooms where you used to beg for a seat. Some friendships will fade, not because you're better, but because you're different. And different feels like rejection to people who benefit from your old version. So they'll test you, they'll guilt you, they'll call you cold, but your discernment will catch what your old self would have ignored. They don't miss you, they miss what you used to tolerate. This is where your shadow tries to bargain. Maybe I should go back. At least I wasn't alone. And you'll answer calmly, I'd rather have honest solitude than fake closeness. That's courage. That's growth. That's the moment your new life becomes real. And here's the part that makes this transformation unstoppable. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop chasing people, chasing approval, chasing maybe. You start building yourself like you're your own best investment. You build your habits, your health, your finances, your mind, your peace. You speak less, but your decisions speak louder. Your silence becomes elegant. Your boundaries become natural. Your self-respect becomes visible. And your authenticity becomes magnetic in a way that doesn't beg for attention. Because the world can ignore words, but it can't ignore a woman who's aligned. So the loop that remains, just under the surface, is this. What happens when you stop trying to be understood and start being undeniable? Because that's exactly where our introduction will hit like lightning. So now you've got the map, and more importantly, you've got the mirror. You've seen how silence can be strength, how solitude can be a sanctuary, how boundaries can be love in its most honest form. You've seen why self-respect isn't an attitude. It's a daily practice. And you've seen what Jung was really pointing at. When the shadow runs your life from the background, you call it bad luck. But when you face it, integrate it, and choose authenticity, your whole story changes, because you stop being easy to predict, easy to guilt, easy to manage. That's awakening. Not a vibe, not a quote, a shift in behavior. Now here's the part that matters. What are you going to do with it today, not someday? Where in your life are you still accepting crumbs and calling it connection? Where are you still explaining your worth to people who benefit from you doubting it? Who gets access to you that hasn't earned it? Your time, your energy, your trust, your softness. And if you're being honest, what's the real cost of staying the same for another year? Because the price isn't just sadness. It's your future. It's your peace. It's your becoming. So I want you to try something simple after this video. Pick one boundary you've been afraid to hold. One, a message you don't need to answer, a conversation you don't need to keep, a no you don't need to decorate with guilt. And when your shadow panics, when you feel that pull to over-explain, pause, breathe, choose the calmer path. That's how inner strength is built, not in big speeches, but in small moments where you don't abandon yourself. And if you do that consistently, you'll notice your discernment sharpen, your independence deepen, your self-respect become visible, and the world will stop underestimating you without even knowing why. Now tell me in the comments, what part of this hit you the hardest? The solitude, the boundaries, the shadow, or the moment the question flipped to, does this deserve me? And what's one situation in your life right now where you know you've been settling just a little? Be real. Be specific. You never know who will read your words and feel less alone. If you want more videos like this, Videos that help you build authenticity, protect your peace, and awaken that quiet power Jung talked about. Subscribe to Mind's Silent Echo. Turn on notifications, because the next video goes even deeper into the patterns you keep repeating, the people you keep attracting, and the part of you that already knows the truth.